Hello and welcome to Insights, everyone. I'm Nnamdi Odiko.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. Thank you for joining us.
This episode will throw up issues around transparency and accountability in government and how the federal government, vis-a-vis the Tinubu administration, hopes to foster public participation in governance by boosting the ability and capacity of citizens to track the progress of government ministries, departments, and agencies. We'll also appraise how the press operates in the midst of competing interests and setting statutory limitations to press freedom, even within a democracy. Elizabeth is here and she's ready with the concluding part of the conversation she had last time on digital literacy in Nigeria. Elizabeth?
Yes, of course, we'll conclude our conversation on digital literacy. And we hear the government is doing so much to increase the number of persons that are literate in this area. So we'll conclude by learning more from our guest.
Very well then, let's kickstart the conversation.
Whatever the issues are,
the National Assembly is constitutionally empowered to scrutinize,
however complex or intricate.
We have involved all the academia, the members of the academia. We have involved the academies.
Be it government policies or in fact any issue of public concern.
Our job is to help you gain clarity and make sense of it all.
This is not really healthy for our democracy.
There's a lot of aggrievance in terms of who has been in power longest and who becomes the governor of the state.
It's also in the quality of food being consumed.
After all, perception is insight.
And gaining understanding is also getting.
Well, now, my first conversation will center on the general principles and workings of the Citizen Delivery Tracker, a mobile application unveiled by the Office of the Special Advisor to the President on Policy and Coordination and head of the Central Coordinating Delivery Unit. It's called the CDCU unit. It's headed by Adiza Usman. This mobile application essentially allows citizens to track the activities and performance of ministries and government agencies using their deliverables and key performance indicators, that's the KPIs. The aim is to build public trust in the government and promote transparency and accountability at all levels with the delivery trackers. Let me bring in my guest at this point, Hamza Aliu, who joins us via Zoom from Lokoja, Kogi State. He is the Executive Director, Initiative for Grassroots Advancement, INGRA. And of course, he's one of our regular analysts here on Insights. Hamza will be appraising the Citizens Delivery Tracker from the civil society perspective and sharing some of his thoughts with us here on the program. Welcome to Insights, Hamza. Good to have you back.
Thank you very much for having me, Nnamdi.
Great. I think we should begin with the general principle of having a mobile application for tracking government's progress and how that could, very well engender public participation in governance. Isn't that a laudable step, even now? I mean, seeing how it is that government is pushing, that conversation to encourage reflection on the strength and weaknesses of the country's accountability system. Shouldn't we be clapping for government?
You're very correct, Nnamdi. It's on principle. It shows that the government has an understanding of what participation and engagement and what inclusive governance is all about. That governance cannot be sustainable if there is no participation and engagement of the citizens who are the beneficiaries of the service provided. And so, on the surface of it, we're very happy about it. It's a laudable drive, and it's something that we should use going forward if we're going to get that kind of inclusion that we want in terms of citizens' feedback from government interventions. And so when we looked at it, we saw that, yes, even though we know it was a civil society-led and civil society-driven action or intervention, but it showed clearly that our government wanted to engage citizens in their, especially monitoring of projects. We were very particular about it should be more about, it should be also include planning of the project. But of course, they say half bread is better than whatever puff we have in Nigeria. So we are taking it the way it is, and we say we're happy about it. We want government to continue on this line. It shows clearly that the government is listening to citizens. It's also showing clearly that the government is also aligning with the SDGs, with the all the international instruments we use in monitoring inclusive governance and sustainable governance. So yes, we will say it's a laudable project and it's a laudable movement by the government.
So when you say you would have preferred or you would have loved the approach where the people are also part of the decision-making process, does that mean you're indecisive, or rather, should I say, does that mean you're decisive on government's approach in getting input from the people in the first place, especially as it concerns these target sets for the MDAs this time around? Of course, we know that certain measures and structures have been used over time to garner public input, but the question that have often remained is whether they truly reflect or have reflected the wishes and needs of the people. I'm sure you noticed how it is that these deliverables and KPIs indicated in the targets for these MDAs were arrived at after 6 weeks. 6 weeks of bilateral sections with development partners, consultants, and even technical teams from the various MDAs. You yourself have acknowledged that it seems to be a product of civil society contribution. So, firstly, I have 2 questions for you. Firstly, doesn't that the fact that governments incorporated, technical teams, development partners, and even the civil society, doesn't that reflect government's acknowledgement of communication as an effective tool for social mobilization? And secondly, very quickly, while you're answering that, how can target setting for MDAs be structured in a manner that ultimately makes the people part of the government decision processes from the beginning, from the onset, that is?
So I love the 2 questions. Let me take the last question first. What we want to see and what is the SOP, the standard operating procedure for inclusive governance is that from the planning stage, like you said, people should be included. Now, of course, like I said, we're not included in this planning stage. The 8-point priorities of the government was a President Bola Tinubu's 8-point agenda. It's not what citizens want. It's what
I see that is what you mean now. You mean government's manifesto in the first place and not the target set for MDAs.
The tracker was set from the manifesto of this administration. And so it means that the indicators and the indicators we are tracking are targeted at the manifesto of the present administration, the 8 of them. And so it's listed in the citizens delivery tracker. And so that's why we're saying we're not included in it, even though we know that it's emanated from a political consultation at the political level during their campaigns, which means that citizens were also part of that campaign itself. But it was never interrogated in the sense that it emanated from the bottom-up approach. Rather, it was a top-bottom approach. That's why we're saying, yes, it's half bread is better than none. We are now being asked to track activities and interventions that have already been put in place by this present administration. And so we are only going to give them a feedback based on what they have sent to us down there using the tracker, using the app itself. We cannot say that this is what we actually wanted. So that is where I'm coming from that part of it. The other part of it is that, yes, we acknowledge that, yes, it is a good process he has put in place to get feedback from citizens on issues around the MDAs. How are they performing? What are they doing? It will aid him in making decisions on who is performing well and who is not performing well. But that doesn't mean that it is what we want. If they ask citizens what we wanted, we will have listed what we wanted, and some of them are not in the 8-point agenda of the administration. Of course, you know what citizens are looking for, our bread and butter issues. We're not seeing them on those priorities that he's mentioning. And so that's why we're saying it's a good step. Moving forward, once we move this conversation forward and establish a culture of feedback from citizens, we'll begin to ask, how do we get citizens' input into the planning session, whether it is from manifesto or whether it is on national planning issues?
But Amzad, that's the question I put forward to you. I said I had a 2-part question for you when I asked if you think, this is an acknowledgement, of communication as an imperative for the development process. If you think government is acknowledging that, yes, we do need to link up with the people in terms of setting targets or development targets for our society, for our communities. But now you're saying, and I get what you mean exactly. when you say maybe at the party level, at the political level, even maybe at the stage of campaigns, candidates and aspirants need to get input in setting targets for society. Is that perhaps what you're talking about? But then, and I'll throw this back at you again and say, how can these inputs at that point now be gotten from citizens so that it can form a part of the manifesto of political parties, of candidates aspiring for positions or elected positions?
Yes, the idea that you need to communicate to people that you are leading is very crucial. It's part of every international and national, and even subnational instrument that we use in gauging what good governance is all about. People must make inputs into what your manifesto is, whether it's at national level, at state level, even at political level. You must get the people's input into it. So we're happy that this government appreciates that and is working with that. And so it's something that we need to encourage going forward. Other governments have tried it, and this particular government is building on it. And so it's a good thing for us. We are beginning to make baby steps in terms of inclusive governance. What we are saying is that if manifestos are the point at which are the document from which governments derive their priority areas from, which is naturally is a good thing because that's what they campaigned on. We are happy that the government has understood and accepted the fact that there needs to be communication between citizens and those they are elected in governance, and that this kind of feedback needs to be used going forward when it comes to national issues, and that these manifestos, despite the fact that we did not see those areas around consultation with party members, because party members are also citizens, they need to buy into this idea. And we didn't see that coming out. Probably it happened in the party level. I'm not a member of the party. So maybe it happened at that level, but we didn't see it in the media that this is how they came about this manifesto. But that said, it is also a knowledge to us that we know that this manifesto was what they used in campaigning. And so obviously, this is what they use in getting the votes of the people to buy into it. And so we're hoping that going forward, we need to see more of this. We need to have visibility on more of these consultations when it comes to citizens inclusion and involvement in the planning of getting this manifesto. But like I said, we are happy that it's baby steps, and we're happy that the governments begin to realize that people should be engaged when they're doing their tracking their interventions and services they provide.
I hear you. I hear you, and I hear you loud. And I get that, look, we need to build this culture of transparency, of accountability. And that is exactly what the citizen delivery tracker is all about. And you talk about baby steps. You've talked about these priority areas. I'd like for us to go through them a bit and see. We're talking about there are a couple of them that have been outlined there. Let me see. There's the economy leads, and then there's national security, which follows. There's agric, there's energy, there's infrastructure and transportation, as well as education, there's health, social investment. Of course, it also says here that the citizens can track these KPIs and efforts of governments at diversification, digitization, the Creative Act, manufacturing, and innovation as well. I mean, how impressive is all of that? And does it impress you enough as civil society to say that we have learned from past mistakes and that this current process is perhaps building on that to genuinely allow for a situation where citizens can utilize, say, maybe the freedom of information law to query, perhaps even the data being presented on that link provided by CDCU?
Well, when you say we're being impressed, I don't know how you can impress Nigerians. We're difficult to impress. But like I said, we are happy that a government seems to want citizens to make input into how it carries out its service or its interventions and help it to link back into planning of subsequent interventions. And so it's a good thing. We're happy about it. But like we always say that this particular instrument or this particular app is targeted at a particular demography of Nigerians, young, educated, ICT proficient. Fine.
So you would have expected a different approach, perhaps, that integrates other sectors of Nigerians. Can you talk about that
exactly.
a bit?
So there are a lot of other non-formal ways governments can interact with their people. For instance, we know that the legislature has their constituency meetings that is embedded in their constitutional duties that they perform. And we know that the political party that the president represents has the majority in the National Assembly. So what stops the president if these particular 8 priority areas are what is acceptable in his party? Why not ask his party members to use it as issues when they go down to their constituency meetings? To be able to say, people, those who are not educated, because this app is only for those who are educated. I can read and write, I know how to download and upload, buy data, all those ones. Those are issues that are elitist, if you ask me. But it is aimed at a certain demographic of citizens. The larger majority of us are not online. The larger majority of us are not educated. And they have to play their part in this feedback mechanism that the government is looking at. So we need to have more of such non-formal strategies we use in engaging our citizens. Yes, it's a wonderful tool. It's easy to download. It's easy. The user interface is simple. The feedback mechanism is easy. All I have to do is look at a particular project and type in my feedback. My location will be included in it. So it's beautiful, but it does not address the concerns of the larger majority of Nigerians who are not in this particular demography. And maybe the government has other strategies it's planning to use. But I know that the president has a personal assistant on constituency matters, and the person is going around states to have constituency meetings. But these particular priorities should form the core of those meetings that they're going to hold, and they should have more of those meetings when they go down, because really our problems are not really at the urban areas. Our problems are actually at the community and rural areas, where our brothers at that particular end of the country have peculiar problems that are different from our own. We may have issues of light. They over there at the community level, light may not be an issue. So it's important that when we develop apps like this, we should also look at the broader application of this app. How can other groups who are not part of the demography we're targeting, how can they benefit? Do we have strategies for them to benefit? So I think going forward, like I said, we're happy about it. But yes, it means that we're going to ask for more, like Oliver Twist. We're going to ask the government to expand their scope of this particular feedback mechanism that they've produced.
Of course, they'll always be asking for more. And I like how you've acknowledged that we are where we are right now. And I think, having gotten to where we are right now, we should take advantage of that. And I guess in talking about that, even for those who can access the link or the website and access this platform, it still goes back to the point of how involved the citizens will be or should be ordinarily if this is to be effective as a public governance tool. So let me ask you, to what extent can citizens, those with access, actively take charge of this tracker initiative and perhaps drive the process to ensure that public policies and programs are implemented, and not just effectively, but efficiently as well?
Citizens' engagement in governance is predicated on an assumption that citizens are capacitated enough and willing enough to engage the system. When we mean capacitated, they have enough skills and competence, knowledge to be able to want to engage. And willingness means that they are patriotic enough. We have developed the zeal in them to say, I am part of this government. Government is me and everyone else. And so I should give my own, make my own input into governance. This is where government institutions such as the Ministry of Education, through our education system, our education policies, and also the National Orientation Agency needs to be more proactive in building this capacity and this willingness on the citizens' part to engage the system. Because like you said, as beautiful as this app is, if you do not actually download it, open it, look at it, make feedback and send, it will not work. It won't be of benefit to anybody.
True.
And so we need to have that willingness to do it. And that is what we are lacking right now within the citizenship. There's a lot of distrust for government, a lot of disenchantment by government, a lot of like a cynical attitude by citizens to say there's this distance between it is their own versus it is our own. Government doesn't seem to be close to citizens anymore. And so citizens feel that whatever I do will not make a difference. We need to build that orientation that this Nigeria, this government belongs to us. And if it's going to work, we need to participate at our own different levels. And one of the means of participating is we need to give feedback to government concerning projects and interventions we're seeing in our communities. And another thing, I'm looking at this app, it does not state exactly what those projects are, where they are located. And so that citizens that are based in those areas will be able to give feedback. It gives you a generalized project definition. And so I'll be looking out for those projects when I go to my communities. But it should be based on what is in the budget. The budget should say we're going to dig 20 boreholes in this community in Kogi State. So that me that live in Kogi State will pick up that particular project and follow it up and be able to give input to say, I know what is happening in this project. It is at this stage. I'll take pictures and I'll send. Also, it should be able to tell us how much has been forwarded to these projects, how much has been released for this project, so that we'll know when the project implementers are not doing well, so that citizens will not raise false alarm without knowing where exactly the problem is. And so I'm hoping that going forward, I know they are working on the app itself. Going forward, they're able to redesign the app to also incorporate some of these issues for us.
Actually, this is an upgraded version. Remember, there was an earlier version that was uploaded, or rather unveiled a couple of, I think like 2 months ago. But of course, an upgraded version was unveiled April 8th. And that is the current version that we have now. In rounding off our conversation, and you've talked so much about participation and the imperatives for citizens to be part of this process, I wonder what your thoughts are on if there's perhaps a role here for whistleblowing and how that can be incorporated as a mechanism also for tracking the performance of MDAs, on this tracker platform. Wouldn't that be a plus, perhaps, to the workings of the platform, where Nigerians can also monitor some of these complaints and probably get, updates or updated on government's response to some of these, to the complaints, perhaps maybe from whistleblowers, This, of course, let's not forget that there's also the need for strengthening of the laws around the whistleblower policy, of course.
Yes, I perfectly agree with you. And that's why we're saying that the app itself needs to be integrated with the budget, the government budget of the day, to say, this project, this is the cost, this is how much has been released, and this is how far we think the project should go with this amount of money we have released. So that when citizens begin to track those interventions or those projects, they will be able to say, I went to this project area. Budget is doing it with their tracker app, their tracker application that they're using. We're hoping that they're going to integrate these two into this government one, to say that this is how much has been released for this project. This is where the project is located. And citizens can now go to those project areas, people who live there, take pictures, raise issues concerning what is the status of the implementation of that project at that particular time. And so it's like, I know that you said that it's an upgraded, of course. Yes. I'm saying that it's application 1.4, which means that this is the 4th upgrade. So it's important that they also take this feedback in, upgrade it further to include the financial component of the budget and the location of these projects, so that citizens will be effectively able to go to those places and be able to say, this is what I'm seeing on ground. And the whistleblowing team means that immediately I see the financial component of the project and how much has been released to the implementer, all I have to do is to take pictures of that particular project and say, this is the stage I'm seeing it in. This should not be the stage it should be in. Based on the amount of money that the government has said they've released to this project, this is what it should be. And again, you made mention of the legal framework around protecting the whistleblowing policy of government. It is still something that we need to improve on, because it does not protect, it doesn't adequately give me that sense of protection if I raise issues concerning accountability and transparency, and at the end of the day, I am made to bear the brunt of that issue when I bring it out to government. We've seen
that's
a lot
also
of
an area that of course needs to be worked on.
They got their hands burnt doing it. So I think it's something that is good for further conversation as we go forward.
Hamza Liu, I'd like to thank you so much for being part of this conversation. But just before I let you go, I'd like to inform our viewers that the tracker platform is currently available as a web link on the CDCU website. And of course, it will soon be uploaded, or rather it will soon be available for downloads on mobile devices. I'd like to thank you so much, Hamza Liu, for sharing your thoughts with us on this issue. Of course, from the civil society perspective, Hamza Liu is the Executive Director, Initiative for Grassroots Advancements, INGRA. Thank you so much indeed for coming on our program.
Thank you very much, Nnamdi, for having me again.
you know, it is a universal declaration of human rights that everyone has the right to freedom of expression, including freedom to hold opinions without interference, and also to seek, receive, and impact information and ideas through any media, regardless of frontiers. I believe that is the derivative or a derivative of press freedom. And though that guarantee is given by the government to the media or the press for its citizens, there are still issues of constitutional statutory protections pertaining to media freedom in many countries, even in the democratic ones. For instance, what happens when there is a conflict amongst public interest, free media, and some competing interests? Well, we'll get to hear from the publisher and editor-in-chief of the Abuja Inquirer newspaper, of course, Dan Akpowa, who joins us now on Insight. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. It's actually great to bring you on. This is your first time on Insight, if I'm not mistaken. I mean,
correct.
Fantastic. Good to have you here. I reckon we should begin more generically and not double down in the first instance on, you know, the situation of press freedom in Nigeria as it is, since Nigeria is a constituent of the larger world that is currently believed to be experiencing a downward spiral in terms of press freedom. And that is not coming from me. That is coming from the Freedom House's freedom in data that they unveil every year. They call it the Freedom in the World data. So some of the key findings from the data, especially the ones I went through in the last 10 years, are concerning. Yet it says that there is hope that press freedom can rebound if given and when given the opportunity. Do you agree with that assertion, especially when, or since it professes that, you know, the basic desire for democratic liberties, even including the access to honest and fact-based journalism, can never be extinguished, not in Nigeria, not in any part of the world? Is that true? Is that false, or are you somewhere in between?
Thank you very much for that question. I think that press freedom should be an integral part of the society, because freedom of the press helps the society to grow. And any country that tries to impede press freedom is not likely to go far, because you attract the wrong attention to your country. There'll be a lot of negatives that come with that. And as a country, you don't want to risk that. As a country, you don't want to risk that. So I think that press freedom should be, journalists should be free.
Okay.
The papers should be free to publish what they want. And if you're dissatisfied, go to court.
Without limitations. Isn't that why we're where we are right now, without some form of limitation? But even before I take you up on that, I mean, you've opened up a Vesta now, and I intend to pursue that in the course of our conversation. But I'd like to take you back again and make sure that you're being decisive on this issue. Do you think and do you agree that, well, like I referenced the Freedom House and their data on the spiraling, you know, press freedom globally, but do you think that in spite of all that is happening, the press, free press, can never be extinguished the world over?
Well, free press can never be extinguished the world over, because anything that happens in one part of the country, if there's any repression of the press in any part of the world, it's reflected elsewhere. I give you a personal experience.
Okay.
In 2007, the Abuja Inquirer wrote a story about the friction between Obasanjo and Atiku and how he was heating up the system, and there were concerns that there might be a military coup. That Monday when we ran the story, a lot of SSS people came to the Abuja Inquirer, closed our office, took me to the SSS or DSS headquarters and detained me and my editor. Now, by the next day, it was all over the wire service, a lot of Committee to Protect Journalists in New York that I'm a member of. They put it on their front page. Other papers picked it up. my cousin read about it in some local publication in New York and got in touch. You know, that's how fast things spread. Now we're talking 2007. So if there is a repression on journalism or journalists, it goes very far. So you can't really do that. You can't really do that. So press freedom is so key to the development of any country.
True.
It's so key to the development of any country. And any repression can have very negative impression of the country, because even at that time, both the United Nations and the U.S. State Department documented my arrest then as one of Obasanjo's infractions on the press.
I mean, I hear you, and I mean, you talked about these imperatives for a free press and how it's important it is for the development of any society or community. But I would also like for us to look at the flip side of the conversation, because now we're inferring to when perhaps there's some form of repression from the other side. But, you know, some reports we've also gotten, it would seem like, you know, large segments of the population are no longer, you know, are somewhat wary and are no longer receiving unbiased news and information. And that is not because journalists are being thrown in jail now, like you said, or not because they are facing some repressive moves. But, I mean, is it not, even here in Nigeria, and I mean, we're experiencing this, and the media is falling prey to more nuanced efforts that impede press freedom, succumbing perhaps to preferential treatment from the powers that be. You know, some segments even condemning those who are professionally doing their jobs and describing them as, no, these ones are not journalists. Some are even more interested in patronage at the expense of true and unbiased reporting. You know, some are even, some are engendering populist agenda without recourse to balance and fairness. Who is to blame in all of this? Isn't it the media that is putting itself in all of this wahala?
Okay, well, I understand where you're coming from. But you see, like you know, all over the world, there are lobbyists. Governments engage lobbyists to do things for them. Even they engage PR consultants, media advisors to do things for them. You know, you might call them spin doctors. But these are people who will bombard you with one side of the story and allow you go to town with it without bothering to get the other side. And, you know, sometimes a lot of journalists are being used without them even knowing it, because the other side will put pressure on you, relentless pressure on you, and not want you to look at the other side. And you'll find that today, a lot of media outlets sometimes use one-sided story, and inside you will see, oh, we tried to reach the opposite side and we couldn't get a reaction from them, so we had to come up with this. In the past, you couldn't do that. In the past, you couldn't do that. And again, you sometimes see that sometimes these kind of reports are influenced, you know, for whatever reasons. They are probably influenced by people talking to them or for whatever reason. But I think that we have to deliver the news in an unbiased form. You must get both sides. And I remember when I was 21, 22, I had my internship with Newswatch magazine. So Delegiwa was the editor-in-chief at the time. So he had sent me to Benin to go and cover a story of Alele Williams being the vice chancellor, having this problem with Sagi, who had been removed as dean of the Faculty of Law and replaced with Doris Afejuku, his student. So he asked me if I could. I was a rookie. I went, they bought flight ticket for me. I went to Benin, I got there. I was hijacked, for want of a better word. Professor Ishesage, Festus, Iyayi, Jackson Omene, they just cornered me, small boy that I was. They told me their own side of the story. I tried to talk to Alele Williams. She wouldn't even see me. I went to Doris Afejuku, who was the dean. and Professor Sage's student. She said, oh, I'm very qualified to do this. But again, all three of them were Shakiris. Alele Williams, Shakiri. Ishe Sage, Shakiri. Doris Afejuku, Shakiri. So I got back to, I thought I had a good story because I had spoken to Ishe Sage, Jackson Omene, and Festus Iyayi, who was the local chairman of ASU. I got back, so when I went back, Deregiwa said, oh, fantastic, what did you do? I said, I went to the university, I saw Omene, I saw Festus Iyayi, I saw Ishe Sage. Good, did you do interviews with them? I said, yes. So he said, okay, that's good. So did you get a balance from the university? Did you talk to Alele Williams? I said, she won't see me. Did you talk to Doris Afejuku? Oh, I entered her office, she walked me out. Did you talk to the PRO of the University of Benin? I said, no, but I believe I have a complete story. So I came back to Lagos. He said, no, we can't publish such one-sided story. And he put it down to my inexperience, and I agree. Then they were to send somebody else to Benin to get that other side of the story to create that balance. For me, I learned a major lesson from that. But today's journalists are in a hurry, especially if people at the top selectively leak their own side of the story to you and do everything they can to make sure that you don't get the other side of the story. And you get excited. You want exclusive. You go to town with it. But you see, readers don't look at that. When some readers don't look at that. Once they see the story, they say, wow, we have an exclusive. We have a scoop. But it's a one-sided story. So even with us at the Abuja Inquirer, I insist that we have both sides of the story.
I mean,
and as much as possible, we try to do that.
It shouldn't just be the Abuja Inquirer doing that. I mean, it should be all of us. The entire Nigerian press, striving for excellence, striving for professionalism in the discharge of our duties.
But it will be tough to strive for excellence because in this era of social media and breaking news from...
I understand that the competition can be stiff.
Yes, competition can be stiff because nowadays you have to really do much to get your story out there because with this era of social media and breaking news, everybody's a journalist.
But
some of that, they don't even verify. They just said, by the time you are coming out with the appropriate story, the following day in the print media, it's already out there. Some people don't even want to read it to get the details. They've just made up their minds with the one-sided one that they have read. It's unfair, but it'll be tough to correct it because news gets to people faster through their phones.
Let me move you on to the issue of media and democracy and how intrinsically they are linked. There's absolutely no doubt that there's this linkage between the media and democracy. And seeing this close relationship between media freedom and political change, I'd like your thoughts on what you think. This whole attitude of political leadership to constructive, analysis, or maybe I'm being kind here, constructive criticism from the press, and how important it is for government to measure its response, just so we can consolidate our democracy. But I know, and I'm sure you also know that even the best democracies are impacted by issues of press freedom even today. So in terms of growing or consolidating our democracy, on the first part, what should be the role of today's media? And on the other hand, how should government perceive and is the word tolerate the role of the media, in a democracy?
You see, ideally, the media should be unbiased. As much as they try to be, but it's not always so. And the government sometimes can be intolerant of the free press. But you can say that today in Nigeria, with this present administration, there's been somewhat tolerance because a lot of the things that I see in the conventional media, in the past, if it was the military...
Are you saying this historically from the historical perspective now, As in coming from where we are probably coming from in the past to where we are right now. Is that why you're saying you're giving them perhaps a thumbs up?
Yes, because this current government, sometimes they are somewhat tolerant. Maybe because in part, maybe because the Minister of
Information,
a good friend of mine who was a member of Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria, he was our secretary. And he's an important go-between, So, and he's reaching out to us more and ensuring that he says you can constructively criticize. Nobody will harass you. We will respond with facts if we have to.
True. And
things will be done properly. He's told us to us several times, and he reaches out well, and he's helping as a good go-between this government and the media owners. But having said that, some people can be very intolerant, especially if they think the media is too critical. But there's no way the media will not be critical. Historically, the media has been very critical. It's like holding the mirror on behalf of the people.
But how critical? Because, especially talking within the context of competing interest. And I'll give you an example. What do you think is the public's right to know in a situation? Let's just create a scenario now, hypothetically, of perhaps something just happened in Abuja now, and you got an exclusive, and there are competing issues. First, there is, of course, the right to know, the public's right to know. But then what happens when that public's right to know conflicts or clashes against, say, national security, for instance? What and how then should the media respond to a situation like that?
No, the media should have unfettered access to information, which is why I commend the Freedom of Information Act.
Yes.
Because sometimes government can be shielding information because they think it will impact on national security and all of that. But the government should be able to take the media into confidence, knowing that they would not report anything that would jeopardize national security. But I can't vouch for social media because anything they get, they just put out there, because even those who are against the government or against the people's will might put out disinformation there and let it go viral. The more salacious it is, the better for them. But having said that, I think that there should be honesty in the dissemination of information, especially from the rulers to the ruled. There should be honesty. And once there is honesty, trust comes into play, and with that way, the government and the media can work hand in hand, and there'll be transparency, especially if they explain themselves very well.
On that note, I'd like to thank you so much, Publisher and Editor-in-Chief, the Abuja Inquirer newspaper, Dan Akpowa. Thank you so much for coming on our program. And of course, it will be good to see you return to Insights another time when we have yet another interesting conversation.
Please, by all means, I am available because NTA is a station that I like particularly. I grew up with NTA, but that was before they became this big. So.
And we're getting bigger. Thank you so much for coming on our program.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Elizabeth Omori is up next.
What are the challenges still impeding we taking this fully for socio-economic development?
In terms of digital literacy, globally we are number 103 out of 134, yes. Which is not really good. If you look at what I have said earlier, we are number 4 in terms of know-how, how to use this technology. In terms of human capital index, which is a very good indicator, we don't have time to discuss about it, but we are 153 out of 157. Practically we are on top of just 4 countries. And I think just one of our neighbors is just ahead of us. Then if you look at about human development index, Also, we are ranked 161 out of 189 countries. And this is also something that I think we can do much, much more better if we are talking about building a future that is thriving. And I talk about 21st century. If you talk about the World Intellectual Index, where Nigerians register their intellectual ability and capability, we are ranked 114 out of 129, which is also not really good. If you look at the e-government index, we are ranked 117 out of 193. We are doing good, but we could do better. If you look at our indicators in the global and other competitiveness index, if you talk about e-participation, I think that's the most interesting part, that link with the digital literacy. In e-participation index, Nigeria is ranked 143 out of 193. And e-participation means our ability to participate in the digital economy, our ability to go online and learn. If you look at the global, Coursera global report, and that's why Nigeria have to intervene through NIDA and Digital Economy Ministry to have a partnership with Coursera to acquire massive license, which is now being deployed as an intervention to mitigate the gap. China in 1990, they have just about 2.6% of their population that have access to higher education. But as I'm talking to you now, about 59% of Chinese have access to higher education. That clearly translates to Chinese growth within the last 30 years. I give you an example. In terms of global productivity growth, annual productivity growth, China is recording 8% annual growth, which is big. But the developed countries are recording just 1%, compared to 1990, where growth as a debt in the developed countries is 4%. 1960. Now, 2004, annual productivity growth is 1%. Even though we have the digital skills, we have emerging technologies, we have AI, but still developing countries are struggling with the existential problem. And now you talk about the global warming, you talk about AI, you talk about robotics. So I think there is a lot of work that needs to be done beyond just the government, beyond just the university, academia, beyond the industry. The society must embrace, and I think that's an area where our churches, our mosques, our political party must push it hard to evangelize people to think about translating this know-how and competency into value.
Many nations are really racing to see that they achieve 95% digital literacy by 2030. And this is not devoid of hurdles which need to be addressed. Can we achieve this before 2030? Can we achieve this goal?
Yeah, I think I may not say no, I may not say yes, because this 2030 is the SDG target. I don't really see us getting to that target by 2030.
Why?
Yeah, because we have impending issues. We have the foundational literacy. We have power issue, which is a big challenge now. Connectivity is something that I think we need to talk about. If you go to a remote area, that connectivity is not there. Then you talk about even the professionals that could teach these skills. They are not there. And if you look at the Japan syndrome, within the last 1 year, I've known over 100 youngsters that are expert in doing what they are doing. They move out of this country. Although it's not a barrier, because most of the technology you could learn on your own without having to go to school. Then the other issue is other existential threat. If you look at the dollar, in Nigeria, even though it's improving, but the dollar rise made many Nigerians not to be able to acquire these new and emerging technology tools. I think Nigeria needs to really do something around developing indigenous technology for us to accelerate access. All what I want to say for us to get out of this is to have a multi-stakeholders approach, bringing the industry, the academia, the society, at the same time looking at our environment. As we digitalize more, and if you are not getting into a greener approach to digital economy, we will create a big problem because this digital economy consumes a lot of power, and with that also create a lot of stress to our natural resources.
Now, from your explanation, and if we are to consider Nigeria's vast population, how do we drive digital inclusion? Now, let's take it from the angle of the government this time around. Yeah,
I think the federal government is doing very well. I must acknowledge the Nigerian government, from Yar'Adua to Jonathan to Buhari to even the current administration, a lot of work has been done. And you see, the foundation of digital economy, digital inclusion is digital identity. And I think if you look at the rest of digital identity, we're not doing bad. I think over 100 million Nigerians now are enrolled into the national database. And I've seen many efforts coming from different parts of Nigeria. Then if you look at the circular recently published by the federal government enforcing the use of digital identity and the public key infrastructure, I think that will drive digital economy and digital innovation. Then if you look at the policy around digital financial services, it's also encouraging more people to be financially included. I mean, I think just recently I checked the NIPS website, only about 60 million Nigerians have access to traditional bank account. I think now with the policy around financial inclusion, I think over 100 million have this digital financial account. And that clearly takes them off the financial bottleneck. And I think if you look at countries like Kenya and Uganda and other countries in East Africa, they focus more on the digital financial innovation, and with the M-Pesa and Paystack that we have in Nigeria, as well as MoneyPoint and few. It all happened because of the government effort. But I think government need to go beyond that. I really want to see government digitalizing as well as revamping or changing the way public services are provided. And with that, you could see a lot of savings. You could see reduction in the corruption, which we perceive to have a lot in this country. And that will also bring people to be part of the governance process. Because when you talk about the E doesn't have a consideration for cultural or religious or physical. I mean, it see everyone as a whole. And I think government need to also do a lot, not just digitalizing, but also going further with digitalization by bringing this AI into the forefront. Because I don't really see us having the right money to have the right infrastructure, the money in terms of revamping our road, in terms of equipping our healthcare facility, in terms of equipping our university system, our primary school is not there. So, but with opening of the pathway, creating a new platform, and I think I must also acknowledge Nigerian government in terms of regulation. I think in terms of regulation, we are among the top 30 in the world, because practically everything you think about, we have the policy. And also, I must mention this, the government is also doing a lot around bringing diaspora network. I think other ministries, education, health, aviation, finance, I mean, every ministry needs to really work together to develop this ecosystem, because digital economy is not a one sector, it's a multi-sectoral application. I think there is a lot of more work need to be done by the government to sensitize the society, religious institutions, traditional institutions, as well as even the industries to begin to use local content and contextualize our solution and make it really work with our reality in terms of literacy, as I've said earlier. And if you have that, and I think we can achieve that with AI, I still believe AI can do much more wonder for us. But at the same time, we also need to be very careful with AI. Because as a teacher, I know what AI is doing for me in the classroom. Because my students practically, I think they know how to use this tool much more bigger than us. So we need to really have a regulation around how this AI has been put in place, as well as having incentives to support innovation, to thrive within our own local context. And I think it's important we go deep into the remote area by equipping our teachers with these skills, because they are the leaders that are championing innovation in our schools. So it's important if teachers are given the right tools. At the same time, if our religious institution could be carried on board, because religion have a lot of
very strong impact.
Impact in what we do. So I think it's important, as we talk about the next prayer in the mosque or the next sermon we'll have in the next, in our church, it's important we begin to have, even if it is 5 minutes, just to talk about this. I've seen that happening in East African countries. And if you look at the other indicators of the SDG, I think I'm an SDG advocate. I've worked around 4 goals of SDG since inception. And we have gathered and curated a lot of data about Nigeria. For us to get there is very difficult, and that requires a lot of stakeholder, multi-stakeholder engagement, and that requires government to bring all the stakeholders on. But I've seen that, but there is still more that needs to be done around that.
More needs to be done. Dr. Islan Kaya, Deputy Vice Chancellor, ICT Research and Innovation Based University, thank you so much for your intellectual contributions on Insight this week. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And that's it on this episode of the program. To join us same time next week for more on Insight. My name is Nnamdi Adipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.